I want to tell you that it's not your fault that as a child you couldn't stop or change what was happening with and around you. It shouldn't be, and it wasn't your responsibility in the first place. You were only a kid, right? So it's not your fault that you didn't know what to do as a child in certain situations. You weren't supposed to know. You were just a child, right? So it wasn't your responsibility at all. And it's not your fault that you got hurt. None of what happened to you as a child is your fault. And I know that you know, but still, maybe you don't know, right? So maybe it even sounds untrue or triggering for you. I'm not sure, I don't know. So I want to tell you something about the child's mind, the conditioning in the child's mind, about emotional self repression, and the voice in your head that tells you that whenever something bad happened to you or someone intentionally or unconsciously hurt you in some way, it was your fault and you deserve that for some reason. And it's very hard to explain it because it has to be a visceral feeling for what I'm sharing. And I also didn't realize the untruths of this belief that it was my fault and the identification with it until I started deep somatic processing. In other words, processing repressed, unconscious, and frozen emotions, beliefs, and thoughts in the body mind. So, most importantly, the belief it was my fault is an unconscious belief and feeling that started mostly back in early childhood in relation to our parents or caregivers, but also the people with whom we lived as little children. So that belief that it's my fault was there to serve us to stay victims of certain situations and people, like victims, to stay victims. But why? Of course, the question arises why? And why would we do that, right? Why would we believe that, right? Because if we believed that, we didn't have to feel and express our emotions to the people who we depended on. And so we could stay safe. That's a very important part. We could stay safe by believing that. So there is a huge utility that serves us that comes with this belief. Again, there is a huge utility that serves us that comes with this belief. I will try to explain it better and in detail. Um, Maybe try to be that little child again and look at your parents in your mind for a minute. So, so maybe it's easier to understand. Maybe. So, the moment you feel neglected, dismissed, or abused in any way by your parents or teachers or bullies as a child, you felt that you lost control over the situation, right? So, by taking on the belief and feeling that it was your fault, in some strange way, you regained some control over the situation. Or at least you felt like connected to the situation by believing that, right? Believing that it's my fault. Because if it's my fault, then I have to do something with it. I have to do something with it. And beliefs don't make sense. That's why they are called beliefs. So don't try to understand it with your adult mind for now, if you know what I mean. So, by taking on the belief that it's my fault, it helps you to be in charge again because you lost control. So, it came that you had to be in charge again, right? And if you are in charge, it means that you are responsible for the situation and what your parents did or did not, of course. Even if you were pointing your finger at your parents your whole life, it doesn't change the fact that unconsciously, at this root trauma of what happened, you still believe that it was your fault. Again, at this root trauma of what happened, you still believe that it was your fault. And wronging yourself or others is coming from the same unprocessed trauma. Wronging yourself or others is coming from the same unprocessed trauma. I know, I know it very well because I've been also doing this my entire life, same thing. Yeah. So because believing and feeling as a child that what's happening is your fault is still better than facing the reality that your mom or dad is unable to protect you, love you, accept and receive you, or connect with you. Or, in other words, that they can't or don't want to protect you from their anger, hurt, and fear, or whatever unprocessed emotions they had exposed on you. Again, it was still better than to face the reality that they can't or don't want to protect you from their anger, hurt, and fear. Maybe I'll share a few examples from my past. For example, when my brother beat me up, and he frequently expressed his anger, rage, and frustration and hatred towards me, I always felt that I should be able to stop him or change his mind. So, by believing that, and it already carries the belief that it's my fault, what's happening is my fault, so I have to change his mind or to stop him. So, by believing that, I didn't have to feel angry and afraid of him, that he should be responsible for his anger and fear, and he should be able to stop himself and change his mind not to hurt me. In other words, I took responsibility for his emotions that he directed at me, so I wouldn't have to feel and express my anger and fear about it to him. So I protected myself with the immediate belief that arose in me, thinking it was my fault and that I was responsible for it. Do you see the connection? I think you are starting to get it more and more, what I'm trying to express here. Or another example, when my father took advantage and sexually abused me continually, I felt that he was approaching me with both sexuality and anger. Consequently, I began to feel that I should be partner in that, making his sexuality and his anger acceptable. It was as if I sacrificed myself and I became the victim to legitimize his sexuality and anger because he couldn't stop exposing it on me. And by becoming the victim, I gained control and took responsibility for his emotions. And so I didn't have to feel or express my anger and fear about his irresponsible behavior. Do you see the connection? So, yeah, I could provide more examples, but the most important thing is that our parents or teachers or bullies or whoever we perceived as authority or larger than us as children couldn't control their repressed emotions, not just emotions, but their repressed emotions that they exposed on us. They couldn't control it. So, consequently, we unconsciously began to believe that it was our fault in some way as a means to shift the responsibility onto our side. And by doing so, we gained control and we didn't have to see them as they truly were. And so we could avoid expressing our anger, hurt, and fear to them. So, so by trying to gain control or taking responsibility for their emotions, we unconsciously avoided to take responsibility for our own emotions and the expression of those emotions. Do you see the connection? Are you starting to see this connection? So, and now, here, when we realize that, we have the chance and the choice to regain the power here, because this is pure emotional self repression, illustrating how it operates in real time, so to speak. And you can observe this if you slow down the scenario with the memory you're examining right now. So, so now we have a choice and we have the power and consciousness to decide what we want. We can either continue believing that it was our fault and remain as that little victim in order to stay in control of our emotions in a way, or we can return the responsibility back to them by processing these protective beliefs and trapped emotions within ourselves so we can give up the belief and that strong energetic charge in our body that says it was my fault and I should know how to stop that. And it's all because we want to stay in control when we actually can't stay in control over the situation and their emotions and our emotions. It's still safer than to feel the emotions, express them, and be vulnerable, and so on. So, if we make the choice, then we can reclaim our authentic inherent power. And yeah, it hasn't disappeared actually. We are merely just caught in a cycle, repeating the same thing until we turn towards somatic processing and integrate on a deep human level. Because trying to control situations and other people is just an external reflection of how we attempt to control our emotions or emotional system, which is one of the strongest forms of our emotional self repression mechanism. Yeah, I hope I could describe it clearly. I really tried. So, yes, I think that's what I wanted to share today. And thanks for listening. Hope it helps.